are now listening to Thinking Out Loud with your hosts, Jay-Lip and J.Rhodes.
We back at it. Thinking Out Loud. It's your boy Jay-Lip, and I am blessed to be with my brother J.Rhodes, co-hosted with me. What up, J.Rhodes?
Here.
Man, you switch it up every week, huh? And moving on from that whack intro, we got another visit with our brethren, our guest, the Honorable Mr. Levi. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Levi.
Appreciate it. Glad to be back.
Yes, sir, man. Last week's episode, I'm going to tell y'all, we got some positive feedback on. And I thank the fans, I thank the listeners. I ain't even going to call them fans. It's just listeners. It's just people, family, brethren, sisterin, whatever you want to call it. We appreciate everybody for giving us a chance to share our thoughts with the world. We're going to keep doing it. I know that last week we said at the end of the episode, as it got a little heated and got a little in-depth with the discussion, we was going to make this a part 2. But I have to address the elephant in the room right now, which is we're a weekly show. And in this past week has been quite a few different culturally impacting events that I have to say my piece on. And the first one is, did either one of y'all catch Donald Trump's presidential address this week?
I caught the recap. I didn't watch the whole thing.
Same here. I watched it in bits and pieces.
And you know what I realized too? I watched the first probably 30, 45 minutes. I wanted to turn it off after about 15 minutes because of the whole standing up, clapping, sitting down after every other phrase. I was getting tired of it. And my wife was like, we should be informed. We should be aware. We shouldn't let, the morning news give us their briefings on what transpired. And I was like, okay, I'll give it some more time. I gave it some more time, and I realized they were doing the same thing when President Obama was giving his presidential address. The only difference is I didn't pay attention to President Obama's address because I trusted President Obama. And I feel like because I didn't trust or I don't trust Trump, I'm tuning in to see what he says. Is there something to be said with the fact that we took our foot off the gas when it came to the 8 years that we had with President Obama?
I don't know if I agree with that one. I think that all those addresses are just like pep rallies. They all say stuff that sounds nice. We need to work together, bipartisanship. We need to fix our problems and work together. Yeah, you're going to clap because it sounds good, but in reality, you still got each party with their own agenda, and it's just some BS, honestly.
But what I'm saying is it me being more retrospective? I'm saying I didn't really pay attention to a lot of President Obama's presidential addresses because I felt like, he got me. He's our president, quote unquote.
Not true.
That's a part of the discussion as well. But I feel like as I processed what transpired, I'm like, why am I even tuning into a person that I really don't believe has my best interest at heart, but I ignored or didn't listen to, or not even respect, but didn't listen to the words of a person who I trusted had my best interest at heart?
No, I didn't feel that way. If anything, I've been trying to pay a little bit more attention to Trump because I've been wanting to see what he has to say. And then also because I'm a bit more skeptical of him. I want to make sure that I'm informed so that I can hold him accountable.
But that was my point exactly. That's literally what I'm saying. I feel like I trust Trump less, so I'm paying more attention to him. And is that a fault of us as a culture, as a black community? We literally tuned in. If Trump comes out tomorrow and says, I had X amount more viewers on my presidential address than President Barack Obama ever had, is that our fault for not really paying attention to Barack Obama the way that we should have been, like we did with Donald Trump?
Well, I feel like I paid attention to Obama because it was the first time I saw a black president. So I was just naturally interested in what he had to say, and I became more politically aware as a result of his election here. Since he's been elected, I've remained more politically aware and just, I guess, with more maturity and just making sure that I'm more informed on what's going on. But I definitely know a lot more about what's going on and what policies and things like that than I did 8 years ago or 12 years ago.
But you know what? It's funny. You said you watched Donald Trump because you want to hold him accountable. Mm-hmm. I mean, how are you going to hold him accountable for things that he said he's going to do and falls flat on? Did we hold Obama accountable for the things that he promised and didn't deliver? Regardless of the issue or the reason why it didn't happen, I'm saying, but do we honestly hold people accountable?
I think he was held accountable. I think Obama did a pretty good job overall.
Nah, see, I can't agree with held accountable. I feel like you could have an opinion and say that you feel like he did a good job overall, but to say that he was held accountable, people are looking at Trump with a magnifying glass to say, okay, what is he saying, and how can we prove that what he's saying is a lie or a falsehood? And and in my mind, that's why I was watching last night. And my wife she was nudging me like, no, let's see what he says, so we can remember this is what he said his plan was, and then we can gauge him and his performance against what he said from the beginning of his presidency. Now the problem is he didn't say shit, or I mean, quite frankly, he didn't say shit. He gave a bunch of bullet points that were read off of a teleprompter, and I'm not dissing nobody reading off a teleprompter because Obama did it, Bush, Clinton, many presidents probably since the television was invented did it. But my issue is when you look at the fact that this man who we have less admiration for and less respect for, this person is who we give the viewership to, and that we actually bolster his popularity by viewing him and what he has to say, right or wrong. It's some leverage that he has against President Obama and what his legacy leaves.
I don't know. I think because it's like when Obama first took the office, they were calling him a celebrity. He was, people were enamored with the whole color thing or the Chicago homegrown thing. So I think it's just two sides of the spectrum. But going back to this accountability thing, though, I mean, honestly, there's no accountability in this country, in the legal system, and in the political realms. I mean, that's one thing that's been proved. Like Donald Trump said that he was going to push out the lobbyists and get Wall Street out of there. And what does he do? He hires like a lot of the large lobbyists to be on his advisory board. No accountability. He's appointed people with no experience to run HUD, education. And even when they go through the whole, pretty much like the interrogation or like the interview process with all the delegates of the congressmen, there's no accountability. People literally answer questions idiotically and they still get a point. There's no accountability.
Idiotically. I agree with you 100%. I guess, are we doing a disservice by continuing to tune in, or should we do what the people who were against Obama did and just ignore him?
Well, I think that there are less people watching Trump. His ratings has been down. His approvals have been down thus far compared to Obama at the same period of time. So there are less people tuning in overall. But kind of to piggyback off his point, I mean, I think he did mention some good points about him. Like you mentioned about unifying America.
Wait. You said Trump made some good points?
Trump made some good points.
Okay. Let's be specific real quick.
Okay.
Name 3 points he made that have actionable responses behind the point. Meaning, what are 3 things that he said that he gave a specific action to execute the point that he made?
That's the problem. He mentioned good points that he didn't.
That's what I'm saying. Like he made a lot of points, but you could make a lot of points in a book report. You can make a lot of points in a paper that you write in high school or college. Like, we're taught to make points, but what did he say that has an executable action behind what he said?
I only have a couple of things where he had action behind the thought. One was he was raising taxes on the imports that America receives to match the taxes of the exports. So, and trying to level off trade. And I actually agree with that. Because a lot of things that we ship out, if we're taxed on, and then you're sending it to us and we're importing, that means less American workers to make it, so on and so forth. And we're being taxed, but we're not taxing at the same level. Then then we're losing out on that. That's not a fair and equitable partnership. So I actually agree with that point. That was probably the best point he made. He mentioned a better healthcare system than Obamacare, but yet and still he failed to mention any details as to what this new plan would be. So he didn't even allude to it or anything like that. He mentioned
his quote is saying, "Who thought healthcare was going to be this hard?" Come on now.
Right, exactly. So part of being not having the lack of political experience right there. So mentioned unifying America. We all need to come together, so on and so forth.
So let me cut you off right there. You just said so on and so forth. That is literally Trump's talking point. Let's unify America. Let's make America great again, so on and so forth. The so on and so forth are literally the points that I feel like he makes to say we need to unify, we need the Democrats and Republicans to come together. When I hear him say that, I'm hearing him say, y'all need to come together to support what I'm proposing versus y'all need to come together for the sake of coming together. And that's just a personal opinion that I have when I listen to what I heard, I'm not going to say last night, but this week, when I heard President Trump, it's tough to say, but when I heard President Trump say, we need to unify and do the best for the people, but he focused on middle class. I didn't hear anything about how to uplift the lower class or how to reel in the upper class. I think that that's a talking point. Without action, what words are words? Without action, words are just words. You're just a talking head. I feel like Trump could potentially just be a talking head. What are his points that are going to dictate activity and performance to say, if you don't meet this goal by year 4 of your presidency, you know why you didn't get elected again?
And that's the thing with Trump. He hasn't necessarily laid out a detailed action plan. So that's what that's what I'm waiting on. Granted, it's his first month in the office, or second month in the office.
Here we go.
So there's 4 years. We do have to kind of see what exactly happens. There's no proposals that have been made yet to be approved.
You know what? To that point, and I'm gonna let you jump in too, Rose. To that point, though, Levi, let me ask you a question. Why is it that we're expected, we meaning the community that's on this podcast right now, why is it that we're expected to give him time to show and prove? And I feel like I'm hearing a lot of, he just got in office, give him a chance. I don't feel like we heard that with President Obama.
No, we heard a lot of it.
We heard a lot of it from who?
From everyone. Give him time, give him time. Now, granted, to be fair, Obama did inherit a bad economy.
Yes.
So he did. So I mean, so the playing table isn't the same. The playing field isn't the same. Quite the same.
It's not at all the same to me, because you have to look at the fact of what did you start with, and what did you start with versus what you're promising to deliver against. Obama was given shit in a handbasket, and his feet were held to the fire ultimately when people were not able to reach a middle ground with him on the government level. They blamed Obama, and I feel like with Trump, already with the presidential address, he's gesturing towards the Democrats and the liberals, and he's saying, no, you guys need to come together. You need to come to the middle ground and meet with what I feel like he's saying is my proposals. Obamacare, repeal, the new immigration law. Trump is basically saying if you're not with him, you're against him. And I feel like that's dangerous when you have a bipartisan government, because you're basically saying half of the nation is against you, and therefore you don't care, and you're going to keep pushing towards making your mandates effective despite the impact it has on 50% of the constituency of the nation.
Well, you know what? Some of his rhetoric has some truth to it, and I kind of agree with it. I think, like, to go back to Obama, like, part of his big opposition, I feel, came from was a difference in philosophy. A lot of what Obama proposed, as far as like the Affordable Health Care Act, the stimulus package, all of those things kind of tread the line of socialism in some people's mind. And that is a big no-no in a capitalist society. That's one reason why they want to repeal Obamacare so badly, because they feel it's more of a socialism kind of program.
Sure.
Right. But to Donald Trump's point, when he says that we need to work together, I do agree with you, Lip. Like, he's basically saying, stop fighting me, come on board and join my party, join my team, which, like I say, I might not agree with it. But he's kind of saying we don't want another 8 years of pretty much like a stalemate like Obama had, because, like I said, people always say he didn't get a lot done because he didn't have the cooperation from the Republicans. Donald Trump is saying, look, if you don't want that to happen again, y'all need to come on and get on this ship.
And I'm with you on that, and I understand that. I guess my problem with it is, why is it that we should give this man, this new president, the benefit of the doubt to say, okay, you know what, let's throw away our barriers and our prejudices and align with him, but we didn't see that same effort with President Obama. That's my only issue. But
I disagree with that. I remember 8 years ago, a lot of people, I was saying, give the man a chance. It's only been a month. He can't change the world in 1 month. So I feel like it's only fair to allow Trump the same grace. And as much as, he was elected.
You would call that grace?
Yes. We would have to allow him. It's a 4-year job. A 4-year term. When President Obama got elected in the office, at least I felt like, and a lot of people, from what I remember at the time, was like, let's give him a chance. It's only been a month. He inherited a shitty economy. Let's give him a chance and see what he can do. Let's not be so quick to judge. With that being said, we have to afford Trump the same sort of grace, willingly or not. It's a 48-month term. We're in month 2. So there hasn't been enough time yet he's not going to be judged on, only partially or in the moment as to what's going on right now. ultimately we're going to look back on it years from now and then see where are we at now compared to where we were, and what influence did you have in terms of getting us to this point. So
Okay, and I respect that. I want to say that what I hear from you is very noble. What I hear from you is a very upstanding man position. But where do we draw the line where we say, was this the same stance that was given? And if it wasn't, if we're going to be like First Lady Michelle Obama said, they go low, we go high. If we go high with President Trump, how long do we give him to continue with the rhetoric and with the divisiveness that he has chosen to make his campaign built upon, and pursue that with who he's put into office, with who he's decided to be alongside of him as far as representing in his cabinet? When do we say that it's been too much? Like
November 2020.
See, that's.
I mean, basically that's it. Because there's nothing we can do in the midterm.
So y'all want to wait years, though. That's what y'all saying right now.
But Liv, what are you suggesting? What can we do? If you say you're fed up tomorrow, what can you do about it?
If I'm
there's no accountability that we can hold them to.
Okay. So here's the first thing. One, President Trump goes at the media because the media does not paint him in the best picture that he wants to be painted as. So we say we support the media in that regard, that we say the media is supposed to be unbiased. We can't control whether they are or they aren't, but they're supposed to be. So the first step in all of this is to rely on the media. Give the media the opinions that we have. If we had a whole movement, we as an American people had a whole movement where they were trying to get Hillary elected based off of sheer popular vote, which has never happened before, and it will never happen in the future because we're based off an electoral college. We had people doing GoFundMe's and petition.orgs and all these other type of ways to get people to sign up online and say that we don't want him as our president, even protests saying that's not my president. If people are feeling this type of way, we need to address their concerns because they're a part of the same constituency of the president, whether he represents them or not. And that's where I find conflict with.
But that's over now.
Yeah, that's exactly. And to piggyback on your point, Rhodes, the only thing we can do at this point is wait to either the next election in terms of making a presidential change. Now, we can't make it more difficult while he's in office. There will be Senate elections and things like that, and House and local government changes, things like that. We can just make sure that we become more politically educated and more politically aware. And then on a lower level, local, even state levels, things like that, we can elect officials that will carry out our points of view and that won't stand for things that we disagree with, whether that's in support of Trump or not in support of Trump. But other than getting involved and becoming educated, there's no real other solution to it.
Right. Maybe we could find a way to impeach him due to some violations and some things he's already violated some civil rights acts already, but obviously that's going to be a long, tried process to get him impeached. But honestly, Liv, I feel like our hands are tied. And this is why it's so important, or it was so detrimental that people actually voted for Donald Trump, because we already saw the signs. He already did. He never presented a plan how he was going to fix anything. He never presented his taxes. He said all kinds of demeaning and racial demeaning marks in news media, Latino people, black people. I mean, the guy history, the rap sheet was right there. And people still voted him in.
You're right. And we can't argue that. We are where we are. So taking advantage of the opportunity that we have right now to have this discussion, I can't refute nothing that y'all just said. We are where we are. We are citizens of a nation, of a president who we may or may not believe in or trust or have confidence or even love, like, hate. But he's still the leader of the free world. And we got to, in some way, shape, or form, deal with that daily. What I'd like to bring this back to is the conversation that we had on a previous podcast about the black community and the impact of Trump economics versus black economics. Where do you believe the separation amongst black people and why we can't unite has to do with skin color, melanation, and any other idea that you have?
I just got done talking to my dad about that. And he mentioned that when he was younger, like a teenager, a kid growing up, that, for example, if a light-skinned girl was, let's say she was on a scale of 1 to 10, she was a 7.5 or 7. And the dark-skinned girl was 8.5. Most people would choose from his generation to date the light-skinned girl as opposed to the dark-skinned girl. And throughout my childhood experience, I've seen the same thing to be true. that started, now tying that back into slavery, for example, that goes back to when the slave master treated basically the light-skinned slaves were the house niggas and the dark-skinned slaves were the field niggas. If house niggas were treated better than the field niggas or field slaves, and basically and more importantly, what it did was it divided the culture and it divided the people. Every other group of minorities, almost every other group, tends to be, you stick together, for example. You go into a Arab community, there's going to be Arab on stores, Arab on shops. The money is going to stay in the Arab community on average about 12 times before it gets out. You go to Jewish, it goes to about 17 times. The Black community is about 1 time. So hence that you won't, like in my neighborhood, I grew up in the all-Black community in Detroit. Most of the stores were Arab-based. If it was a Black store, a lot of times the owners, there were stories about like owners getting shot or getting robbed, that sort of thing. And they got robbed or shot more than the Arabs in our own community. It's ridiculous. So it goes back to just, I think, that division of labor in the very beginning, and that never was addressed. And it's a constant competition as opposed to who's, we're competing amongst ourselves when we should be working together to get to a greater place together. We're better together as opposed to being separate and fighting against each other. It just kind of evolved. It evolved in different forms over the years, but the basis is where it started. If you just look back, that's where it would start from.
Okay, so if we start from the separation, are you saying that slavery is what instilled colorism between Black people, light skin and dark skin?
Yes, because if you're light skinned, I'm dark skinned.
No, I'm brown skin.
He borderline light skin.
I'm brown skin, baby. I got my bronze. Use another example.
Well, if I'm a light-skinned slave and you're a dark-skinned, if I'm a dark-skinned slave, you're a light-skinned slave, I'm out on the field picking cotton. I'm not picking enough cotton fast enough. I'm getting beat and whipped. Meanwhile, you in the house making massa supper. We both serving massa, but you kind of teasing me saying, haha, I get to serve massa in terms of I get to be in the house where it's nice and I ain't outside and it's not hot. Those sorts of things versus I'm suffering against that, as opposed to both looking at it like we're both serving this master here and we need to unite together to see how to kill him and overthrow him. So
God damn. All right,
he gotta go.
Right, and I feel you on that. He said we gotta come together to figure out how to kill Massa. All right.
So
what you're saying is real because
it's kind of
I'm not trying to poke fun at the reality of the situation is, Levi, you're absolutely right. There was a time where all Black people that were brought to America were brought here as slaves. I personally do not know of any person prior to slavery who was brought to America, who came to America on their own reconnaissance. Meaning,
there are people though.
There are. I say I don't know of them. Meaning, they're not in the history books that I've been taught. They're not in the books that I've read. So I don't know of those people or those cultures. But to relate it back to what Levi's point is, yes, there was a distinction in times of slavery where there were the people who were doing hard labor, which some scientifically would attribute dark skin to being to the fact that those slaves were out in the sun all day longer than the slaves who were in the house making supper or tending to the needs of the family in the home in the plantation house. There's truth to that. So I understand what you're saying with that regard, but my concern is how long does the culture have to go on from slavery for us to say, okay, we realize that our great ancestors maybe got it wrong because they were pitted against each other, and now it's our time to unify. How do we bridge that gap?
It's just going to take some time because, like I said, slavery only ended like 46 years ago.
But you say it's only going to take some time, but you just said 40, 60 years. People don't live 40 or 60 years, bro.
I understand that, but remember, this is generation, this are years, centuries of brainwashing and also discrimination. Because one thing, too, discrimination is not only limited to the black people. I mean, even the first European settlers were discriminating against the French and the Italians. So there's always going to be a reason to discriminate against somebody because they're a little different from you. Unfortunately, it seems to have crippled our community more than others. But they have a caste system in India. I mean, it happens. Even in Brazil, if you're a lighter tone than like a darker Brazilian, if you're an Afro Brazilian, like they discriminate against them too. Like they're considered poor. So it's a lot of this does stem from European brainwashing of what is perceived as beauty.
All right, so if we say that it derives from the European definition, when do we say, okay, you know what, enough is enough? Let's grab hands and say we all black, we all part of the same culture. Let's build right now.
Right.
What does it take to make that happen?
It's a day by day, person by person thing. I think we keep waiting for the next like Martin Luther King come by or next Jesse Jackson. And yes, they came, they've helped, but it hasn't resolved it. Instead, we need to take a look at people that have done stuff to empower blacks. LeBron James, for example, with the $40 million he donated to send 1,100 kids to college, primarily probably from underprivileged African-American, from Akron. So from where he grew up at. So people like that, and just coming together as a people, supporting each other businesses, helping out when you see somebody's going through the same struggle you're going through.
But that's where I have a
doing
problem,
the things
because
we're doing on this podcast.
Your phrase was helping out people who are going through the same situation as we are. I'm not claiming this, but you said I'm light skinned and you dark skinned. So why is it that we can be brethren, we can be brothers? You are a person I consider my brother. Why can we form a bond and move forward in life, protecting and looking out and helping each other, but there are others a part of the community who you feel like cannot, because of the indoctrination of light skin versus dark skin from slavery decades ago?
Well, that was centuries. We're trying to undo something that's been going on for 300-400 years in 30 to 40. There's only been 1/10 of the time, as J-Rhodes was saying initially. So it's going to take time. It's going to take a couple of generations. The only thing we can do on our end is make it better for our kids, for our future generations. And then hopefully they can take what we've done and make it better for their kids, and so on and so forth. The same way the trend started is the same way you can reverse it. Just generation by generation, take what the next person did.
No. If you want to say the only way to fix it and reverse it is we'd have to enslave white people. So let's be real now. Like, the only way to reverse it would be to say, you know what, white people, we're going to put y'all on pause for a minute. We're going to enslave y'all for a couple hundred years. Let us get our game up, technology, learning, education, everything. Now we even. And then we unpause the game of life, and then we all move forward. So, Thinking Out Loud family, you just heard part 2 of the dialogue with myself, J-Rhodes, and the Honorable Mr. Levi. If you haven't already, listen to part 1, which is episode 2, titled Trumponomics versus Blackonomics, and look out for the finale, part 3, next week. I want to thank J-Rhodes, my co-host, and our guest of honors, the Honorable Mr. Levi, for jumping in yet again on this important conversation. If you like what you hear, subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Facebook at Thinking Out Loud Podcast. This is what it is, and this is what we do. Thinking Out Loud. We out.
This episode of Thinking Out Loud was executive produced by Jay-Lip. Music provided by Daisy Smith. Artwork and logo provided by Rob D. And sponsored by you, the people. We thank you for listening.